Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the main object Big Book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David, so good to see you all, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm going to ask my friend Michelle to read the AA preamble. And there we go. It should be up on the screen.
Hey, morning, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm an alcoholic. This is the A preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Michelle, thank you so much. And now I am going to invite all of you to join me in welcoming God into this meeting this morning with the by reciting the Serenity Prayer. Um, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'll briefly remind everybody, and especially if there are new people here. I see Steven came back from Toronto, so we didn't scare him away. And I think it's his second time here. If there's anybody here for the first time, we are a line by line big book study, so we go through the book very slowly, and by doing so, our objective in doing that is to really unlock the power of using our primary text as, for some of us, like myself, the primary tool in sharing the power of Alcoholics Anonymous and delivering the message that our founders intended to be delivered. And I found, even after years of going to big book meetings where we read a chapter at a time, it kept feeling like this experience of trying to drink from a fire hose. And I just didn't know what I was working with. And it was only when I met people who slowed down and slowed the process down and took it a line at a time that the real power of the book really opened up for me. And so hopefully for you as well. And what we do is we categorize the text into 5 different categories. I'll bring those up, and you can see there questions, directions and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And what we do with those, the colors are the highlighters that I choose to use. You can certainly choose your own, and they're going to be in the chat as well. And so what that allows me to do again is, because it's all about, I'm sure you're all aware if you're here, our primary purpose is to, of course, stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And so for me, everything is about those 2 objectives. And if I can get more, even carve a finer point on it, what I find at this stage of the game is that staying sober, meeting that first part of my primary purpose, is directly linked to how, what do I want to say? How loyal I am to the second part of that primary purpose, meaning helping other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So everything, the highlighters, taking it slow through the big book, is about helping another alcoholic achieve sobriety and hopefully sustain sobriety. So we are we're going to start a new chapter today. We are on page 44, beginning chapter 4, We Agnostics. So I hope you have your big book with you. I have the study edition, which is so helpful. And what I will do is I will share. We're going to do about a page and 3/4 today. Hopefully, we'll get through all of it. There is a lot going on here, and I'll speak until 7, a little around there. We'll come to a close, and then we'll open it up. Now, and again, if you've been here before, you know that this meeting is recorded, and we post it on our YouTube channel. So those people who aren't here or want to keep up with us can do so. And just know that we turn the recording off when we open it up for discussion, so that if there's anybody new or queasy about having their voice recorded and put out there into the world, we avoid that. So anyway, we're starting on page 44. I'm going to summarize where we are now, because a lot has gone on up to this point. And so we just finished last week more about alcoholism, and we visited with our friend, if you remember, Fred the accountant, and we learned a lot from Fred. Anyway, in the previous chapter, more about alcoholism, Bill he presented us with example after example after example, and the purpose of that was to crush any lingering hope that the alcoholic could somehow use his own will and intellect to solve his illness. And by now it should be clear that when it comes to alcoholism, alcohol and alcoholism, on our own we are without defense. And then Bill closes the chapter by making it very plain, and maybe for some of us uncomfortable, that our only defense is going to be found in he says specifically that his defense must come from a higher power. And so he uses this chapter, We Agnostics, to really dive into that point, that we need a higher power. And but also let's note the title of the chapter, We Agnostics. Now, what's an agnostic? An agnostic is, briefly stated, you know what? I should have looked that up in my dictionary, and I didn't. So forgive me. I am going to do a quick look. Okay, here we go. Agnostic, one who denies that man possesses any knowledge of the ultimate nature of things. Okay. One who neither affirms nor denies the existence of a personal deity. Deity is God. So anyway, that's I'll make sure that definition is part of the notes. It's not the same as an atheist. An atheist absolutely denies and believes there's proof for the non-existence of God, and the agnostic is sort of uncertain and not sure if they're ready to commit. So in this chapter called We Agnostics, Bill confronts the daunting task. He's got two things in front of him that he has to do, and he even, we'll see in these opening pages how he really starts to tackle both those things from the beginning. And that is, the first thing, he's got to drive it home without question that the only solution or salvation for us is in a higher power. But at the same time, he wants to be careful not to alienate the person who may not be so sure they're ready to embrace a higher power, and or people who may have had negative experiences with religion and other types of spiritual pursuit. So so Bill is aware that this is his task. It's a daunting task. So what he does is, we'll see, is he tends to continually in this chapter balance it back and forth. He drives home the stark fact, but then he softens it by saying, "Hey, we were there too," and we'll see him do that as well. Here's a harsh fact. Hey, we understand this is difficult. So he really tries to present the difficult truth while welcoming the people who may be skeptical or trepidatious. So in the chapter's opening pages, we'll see how he does this balancing act, and he reminds and begins the chapter with two questions to really kind of an alcoholic quiz. We'll see in a moment, and but then he shows how our familiar problem solving problems just don't cut it. So let's jump in anyway. On page 44 at the top, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made the clear distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, and what he's going to do in the next. And those I have blank. I don't have those highlighted, but the rest of the paragraph there I have in pink for a warning. You could also, now I put it as pink. Before you mark that, just know I kept debating back and forth, or should it be green for direction or explanation? I chose pink. Choose whatever you think. Direction, because this is a great question to ask a newcomer. Two questions, I should say. And so what he does is he summarizes where we've come in the book up till now with these two questions. And here it is. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. And what does he mean by that? He means, do you have the obsession? You can't quit entirely. Or, if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take. In other words, you experience craving. You are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So think about it. He's really boiled down everything, all the weeks. I think we're in week like 44 now. So all the texts that we've gone through over the last 43 weeks, he's boiled it down into these sentences right here. And what he has, it's almost like a gateway we have to pass through if we are going to successfully move forward through, not just through the rest of the book, but through our recovery. And that is, in that last sentence, if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And I want to use an analogy because that is so important. Now, if you're new and still figuring this out and still developing a relationship with a higher power, wonderful. And we're glad you're here. But I'd like to address a question to the people who have been through the steps and who have felt and experienced the power of this program. If we agree with that we have an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Imagine, I'm going to use an analogy. Imagine 3 years ago, we were in the midst of COVID. I'm going to use, it's a silly analogy, but follow me for a second. Imagine if we would have somehow discovered that eating raw carrots could have cured COVID. Now we know, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, we know that eating raw carrots will not solve COVID, okay? So please. But anyway, imagine if you would have had COVID and somebody said that and you ate raw carrots and your COVID was instantaneously cured. Would you tell anybody? Would you have told anybody? Or would you have kept it to yourself? I mean, I would have been posting it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I would have, I would have been one of those guys who has the Bible verses painted on the side of the car. I would have done the same thing, and eat raw carrots. So I would have told everybody. And it would have been part of every conversation that I had with people. So back to our text. I'm experiencing an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. If I truly believe that a spiritual experience is my only salvation, the question I will put to anybody here is that fact a part of what you share every time you raise your hand in Alcoholics Anonymous? Think about it. Because how often, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody except myself, how often have I raised my hand and I've shared and I have proposed a solution, or I've shared, well, this, I was feeling bad and I did this and this worked for me, or whatever, and I wasn't sharing the fact that it was a spiritual experience that solved my problem. And it's not about you have to toe the line if you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, or David says this is how you have to share. What I would put forward is we have an obligation to the newcomer to tell them, to give them, not just you can get into the truth. I'm not concerned about truth right now. I'm concerned about what works. I'm concerned about, are we giving alcoholics, new alcoholics, the real remedy to their problem, or are we giving them a temporary solution? And I won't, we got a lot to go through here, so I'm not going to, I'll get down off my soapbox. Okay. The next, we're in the second paragraph, and the first sentence is a warning. To one who feels he is an atheist or an agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. And then the second sentence, or the one that closes out the paragraph, I have in green for direction. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. And why I put that as direction is I think again, as Bill does a lot of times, he's writing to two audiences. He is writing to the suffering alcoholic, and he's letting them know, hey, we understand that the point we're confronting you with is not comfortable. We're not just saying get over it. We understand you may be struggling with that. So that's what he's saying to the person who's checking out AA or newly recovering. But he's also talking to the person who is sharing this message, the sober alcoholic, the person who's been through the steps. And what he's saying to those people is, don't forget that the person you're sharing this message with may be struggling with the God idea. So be firm and be clear, but be gentle. Does that make sense? And the next, so I'm on the third paragraph, but it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were exactly of this type. That's an explanation, so I have that in green. The next sentence, however, I have as a warning. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. And for a long time, I put that as a warning, because for a long time I read that sentence and I took it to mean, at first some of us tried to avoid the issue thinking like we don't have alcoholism at all. And that may be true, and that may be the way that he intended it. But the way I related to it, and the way I relate to it today, is when he says, hoping against hope we're not a true alcoholic. That means for me today, I hope against hope I'm not so bad. My alcoholism is not so bad that I absolutely positively have to do all the things these steps tell me to do. I believed we've all heard of Bud Light or Coors Light. I thought I had alcoholism light. You know, I had some of the symptoms, but I didn't go to jail. Well, except for a little bit, but except for that. But I did not kill anybody. I'm never in a horrible car wreck. So like that amends stuff, and confronting people and, sharing with them and making a list and that's for like those really bad people. That's for the hopeless people. But I'm pretty comfortable now. I've been sober 30 days and, it's feeling good. I get a hug every time I come to a meeting. So, let's not worry about all that other stuff. Okay. So at first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. And that is direction. You could also call it a warning. I labeled it as direction. So in green. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you. And okay, because this sentence before, I want to go back to it. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spirit. Oh, hold on. We must find a spirit. We had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. And it means that eventually, if we are going to stay sober, and if we're going to stay sober over the long term, we have to alter the way we live our lives. And that doesn't just mean we go to 90 meetings in 90 days. This is how we live our life when we are not in a meeting, the other 23 hours of the day. But cheer up, something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows you that you need not be disconcerted. Okay, so that's an explanation, so I have that in green. And then we get into the next, I'll make this easy for the next paragraph. We have a couple lines on 44, and then we go to 45. All of it is a warning. And remember a minute ago when I said, if we really believe that a spiritual experience conquers our disease, why do some of us, myself included, share almost, you could call it, alternate theories of a solution to alcoholism? And this goes into some of those alternate theories. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. And I'll come clean. Instead of focusing on the spiritual solution, I have raised my hand and shared about a code of morals. And I have shared a better philosophy. And I have shared something that I read or I heard watching an episode of Oprah. And I have shared, and again, I'm not going to, chastise anybody who shares things that aren't conference approved. However, I will share with you that what I have found is when I stick to those things that are conference approved, I am 9 times out of 10 sharing the spiritual solution. Okay. Codes and philosophies. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might. Here we go. Here's why. It's not that we are, this next sentence is sort of the bullseye. Why it's not helpful to do that. Code of morals, philosophically comforted, because the needed power wasn't there. One of the biggest warnings in the book. Our human resources as marshaled by the will were not sufficient. They failed utterly. And I think I might have shared it last week, ladies and gentlemen. Wouldn't it be wonderful if if 5 seconds after I fell into an ineffective solution to my disease, wouldn't it be wonderful if 5 seconds later I had a drink in my hand? I mean, seriously, because if I focused on living my life according to a code of morals or a new philosophy, and then 5 seconds later, boom, I was drinking, what that would tell me is, hey, that doesn't work. Stop doing it. But that's not the way it works. What I have found is I was capable, and it is possible to stay sober for decades on codes and philosophies. And just not, you're sober, but you're not happy, joyous, and free. You're sober, but you feel like, those things just don't come to a guy like me. I'm too damaged. So I want to get through this text, so I won't dwell on that. But so this next sentence, first full paragraph on 45, is a warning. And I think it's one of the most important in the book. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. And remember it said in the book, I can't recall off the top of my head, but it said, unless we do these things, we will not meet the certain low spots ahead. And so this is why we need that power. And then we had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourself. Obviously, that is in green, that is direction. that is probably one of the most important pieces of direction in the entire book. Why do we need a higher power? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have a higher power, we are going to live from our own mind, our own mental faculties, our own mental resources, our own intellect. The problem is alcohol owns the software that we're operating by. It may not make us drink today, but over time it will lead us back to drink or a non-drinking alcoholic lifestyle. Meaning I go to meetings, but when I'm not in a meeting and in front of AA people, I act and feel like an alcoholic, like an active alcoholic. So I believe that is why he has power greater than ourselves italicized. And it's also why he adds the comment, obviously. If Bill were writing that today, or if Bill were putting this on Instagram, that's the point in which they would say mic drop. That's where you would see like the little mic drop emoji. But where and how were we to find this power? And that's a question. So, our often neglected orange highlighter. We can pull that out, brush the dust off, and that is a question. And I'm going to end there. And although I'll cheat a little bit, and I want to go into the first sentence of the next paragraph, and then that's where we'll start next time. So he asked a question: where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Oh, and this sentence I have as a promise or a reward. Big promise. Where and how are we to find this power? That's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you. Its main object is to give you the ability, the capacity to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Meaning, here's why it's important to root not just your program, but your message in what's being shared in the book. Because otherwise, and I have been guilty of this, we run the risk of carrying a message that may keep us sober but will get others drunk. And with that, I think, why don't we bring it to a close? And my part, that is, and I'll open it